Hey guys, I wanted to make a video again for Fire this time, just talking about the general talent tree and what's happening with it. Sorry, I should say the general Fire talent tree. And kind of what are the changes that have been happening for Fire that have been amazing in my opinion. They could not have done a better job, maybe slightly better, but yeah. So first few things I want to highlight before going into the notes is notice that Cauterize is now gone from the tree because it's baseline. Hooray. Um, and also they did a really good job with the general layout of the tree over here. If you notice, I need one more point to advance to the lower levels. And I have pretty much every point selected that I could want except for these two. This one reduces the Pyroblast cast time by 0.5 and damage dealt by 10%, and obviously feel the burn. So really the choice is going to be between any of these points or that I have picked versus like obviously you'll take one of them. So really it's between this and one of these points. Or obviously anything in the capstone. But fundamentally, design-wise, this is very good. We get all that we want. There's a little bit of choice, but not too much where it gets annoying. Most of our choice ends up happening in the capstone tree and what we do with our capstone talents. So off the bat, that's great. Just wanted to shout that out. But going on to the notes, I'm not going to read every single one because obviously there's a lot. But I'm going to highlight kind of the main ones because a lot of these, frankly, are not that impactful. So, right, for example, segue, great segue. First one talks about Living Bomb. Living Bomb is still bad. You're not going to play Living Bomb. This one, Convection, I think is over here. Yeah, you're not going to... It's funny, you do end up taking this, I'll talk about this later, but you'll never press Living Bomb even though you take it. Deep Impact, what you'll notice here is that it's a capstone below Meteor. Meteor used to be in our general tree. Now it's in our fire tree. It's actually quite decent in power, but I don't think you quite play it on single target. But what they did change is that it actually doesn't split damage anymore on its baseline node. So it actually does AoE, which is great. If you take Deep Impact, it increases the damage of Meteor and then makes it split damage evenly. Obviously, its cooldown is also reduced. To me, this stands out more of like a single target choice, right? If we want to play single target Meteor. Sims obviously will reveal whether this is good or not, but from my understanding, it's not that great for a point investment. Too many other points are worth a lot. As we look more down the notes, we can see like Inflame with Pyromaniac. It's a new choice node. It basically just makes Hot Streak Pyros a little more powerful on your Ignite. Unfortunately, the number on this is a little too low for it to be competitive, as far as I know. But yeah, Pyromaniac unfortunately didn't receive a redesign. It still falls under too awkward to play with and very annoying. With Tempered Flames, it's not too bad, but I don't believe you want to play Tempered Flames. The next thing is a big one. For all you non-SKB enjoyers out there, they added a choice node to SKB called Unleashed Inferno. Basically what this point does is that it increases the damage of your spells in combustion and also makes those spells in combustion reduce the cooldown of combustion. Specifically, only while combustion is active are you reducing the cooldown of combustion with this point. Obviously you still have Kindling, but obviously Unleashed Inferno is an extra source. What's super interesting though with this is that if you play Unleashed Inferno, you can actually play with Temporal Anomaly over in our general tree, which can give you a random proc instead of double lust. And that actually seems to be quite a powerful combo because obviously you can reduce the cooldown of Combust. Many have been familiar with like Minute Mage from back in BFA. When you play Temporal Anomaly with Unleashed Inferno, it's actually more like 30-second Mage, and the idea is that you're very powerful every 30 seconds, but you're weaker outside, just like instead of having an SKB. Unfortunately, this is not quite a competitive option for like min-maxers, but it's definitely viable. I believe the number I saw on Discord by somebody posted it was if they changed the number here from 50% to 70% increased damage, Unleashed Inferno would actually be the number one like simming build. So it's not too far off from being quite good, but unfortunately misses the mark a little bit. But if you really don't enjoy SKB, you at least have a good option. Like you can do Mythic raiding with Unleashed Inferno. You won't get like a 99 parse or a rank 1, but it's an option. You won't be trolling your guild, Especially if you're not comfortable with SKB, it might even be a better choice for you. So that's a great addition, I think, to help people out who dislike SKB. Some of the other useful nodes that they added was Intensifying Flames, which just makes Ignite stronger when you have 3 or less targets. It's nice for small target packs. Unfortunately, I'll kind of touch on this later, but Ignite spreading AoE playstyle is not really a thing anymore. It's severely like underpowered compared to Flame Strike, but we'll get to that later. As to why Flame Strike has been so good is because of this talent right here, Fuel the Fire. This has been something people have been asking for so long. Essentially, what it does is Flame Strike now contributes to your hot streaks like Pyroblast would, but the chance of you proccing, Pyroblast or your chance of proccing Hot Streak is dependent on your crit. So if you have 30% crit chance, it's kind of like rolling the dice every Flame Strike. But obviously, when you're in Combust, it's 100%. So in Combust, like, you can do, like, for example, Flame Strike, Fire Blast, Flame Strike, Fire Blast, Flame Strike, which you never could before, right? Effectively, this has nearly doubled our output of our Flame Strikes compared to previous iterations, which has made Flame Strike extremely powerful and extremely enjoyable. There is a little thing, little issue with how Flame Strike and this talent works, but it's very like niche, and I'll talk about it more in like a guide instead of this. But yeah. Another thing that has been a great change is Wildfire. This used to give us crit percent and give our allies crit percent in Combust. I believe that crit percent didn't even get converted to Mastery in Improved Combustion, which was really bad. Instead, now it gives us crit damage, which is amazing, which is just like, 4% extra damage essentially. And it gives our allies also crit strike chance, which is probably better for them than for us. So they just modernized this talent to be like more makes sense, which is amazing. Going down some other things, Ignite spreading is just a bit more limited now, from 4 targets to 3. When you take Master of Flame, it used to be that you could, with Master of Flame, it used to be 8 targets. Now it's 6. So, we went from 8 to 6, or 4 to 3 without Master of Flame. Flame Strike damage buffed, cast time reduced. You'll notice that Flame Strike and Pyroblast have both been reduced in cast time. Pyroblast cast time is actually quite fast now, which is amazing. In double combust, it's like double SR, it's like 1 point something, and without it, it's like only a 2.5 second cast, which is more like a Chaos Bolt, which is great. And then there's just a bunch of tuning changes. I've already talked about Cauterize being removed. They've nerfed Tempered Flames a little bit. As to why they did this is because they buffed Pyroblast damage, and what happened when they buffed it and reduced the cast time of it, the funny thing was that damage like per execute, so the damage done versus the cast time, Pyroblast is actually better than Fireball with Tempered Flames, quite significantly. So they had to nerf this to make it a bit more balanced, which is fine. This talent shouldn't be the choice in my opinion, but it's interesting if it's there. Then they just buffed and nerfed a bunch of other things. We've already talked about Meteor. From the Ashes has been reworked. It used to be that the cooldown, if you had 3 charges, you had more mastery. Now it's actually, if you have 0 charges, you have more mastery. I've tried to play with this talent. The annoying part is that because whenever you crit, you reduce the cooldown, it almost feels like a mini game to constantly keep using Phoenix Flame to make sure it's on low cooldown. But also, you can only use it in Combust really well, because outside of Combust, it's not a guaranteed crit, so it can be a little annoying. I didn't like playing with this talent, I'll be honest. But it's probably a better design like this. I wish they would do something with it to make it a bit more enjoyable, but it is what it is. For now, Electraz's Fury is the king, and I like Electraz's Fury. Just some nerf talents. Favorite Incantation is a bit weaker now. SKB, right. So previously we used to have Pyroclasm, which was a great tool, great kit. But unfortunately, it was very annoying to play with sometimes, and specifically, it made the spec quite a bit harder. Now, Sun King's Blessing has Pyroclasm built in. So every Pyroclasm hard cast is now an empowered Pyroblast as well. This is great for 2 reasons. 1, it makes the spec easier. 2, it makes SKB like an actually good cast to cast. Because if you don't have Pyroclasm and you're casting SKB, it really feels bad. A third extra reason I should have mentioned, I guess, also is that this means Pyroclasm RNG is not a thing anymore. Because every 8 Pyroblasts, you're going to get a Pyroclasm essentially, which is great for our consistency. Some of the other changes are just like minor things, like for example, Phoenix Reborn. Not Phoenix Reborn, sorry. Call of the Sun King increases Phoenix Flame damage by 15%. It's like, minor things that you don't really care about, but it's there. Improved Scorch is a lot stronger now. They doubled the power, so it's actually something we want to play, which is good for our execute, like DPS niche. Fantastic change. I should have mentioned this. If you enjoy SKB and you've played M+, we all know the pain of finishing a pack and being on 8 SKB stacks, and then your tank randomly decides to start doing a ready check or something before the next M+ pull. Thankfully, Blizzard saw this problem and made it so that when you hit 8 SKB stacks, the duration of the buff isn't 15 seconds, but it's 30 seconds now, which is great. So SKB will never fall off anymore. Fantastic change. Or hopefully should never fall off anymore. Yeah, and then there's some other stuff like I talked about. Firefall just was tuned to be a little bit better. Well, a lot better actually. It now spawns a meteor every 15 fireballs or pyroblasts. It says on the tooltip causes your next fireball to call down a meteor, but it's actually your next fireball or pyroblast to call down a meteor. This actually makes Firefall a very strong talent. I believe it's a talent of our choice now, thanks to Sims. Very powerful. It's pretty fun to play with. Yeah. Some of the bigger changes also include Conflag. Anybody who's played the Mage for a long time knows that Conflag is a terrible talent, but they've actually changed it quite a bit. It was like very small, but has buffed it significantly. Previously, if you refreshed Conflag by just pressing Fireball or Pyroblast, it just refreshed the dot. But if you've played the dot class, you know, like, okay, if you have a 1k dot and then you refresh it, now you have another 1k dot. It's still a 1k dot. Like, you just, it's a waste. But now instead, it works like Ignite, where every time you add, like, you know, a Fireball or a Pyroblast, that 1k is going to keep getting added on and on and on. This improved the damage of Conflag significantly, like more than 5 times or something. It's actually quite a strong talent now, which is great. Some of the other changes include hyperthermia. So hyperthermia now is a 6-second duration buff instead of 5, and it pops when you consume a hot streak instead of when you activate it, which is a great change. This is something I asked for in the Dragonfly beta, because basically when you consume a hot streak, you're always in global. So you're not going to be able to cast anything for 1 second anyway, roughly 1 second. So that gives you 1 second time to react to the buff, which has always been a problem with hyperthermia, where you could never react to it. To compensate for being on global, essentially being AFK for the first second, they've increased the buff duration by 1 second. So you're still going to get the same number of Pyroblasts, but it feels a lot nicer when it procs. I actually really enjoy this talent, because it's quite fun when it procs. Unfortunately, it doesn't proc in Combust. This was a change they made so that it doesn't kind of mess up with your SKBs or your combustions, because obviously you can't use SKB when hyperthermia procs. I actually dislike that. I kind of hope they remove the while combustion is not active part, because when it procs in combustion, it's really fun. Yeah. The only complaint that people have about hyperthermia is feel the burn, because when hyperthermia procs, you cannot refresh feel the burn. But feel the burn is a lot weaker now. It used to be that feel the burn was 4% per stack, stacking up to 12. Now it's only 2 to 6, which is, half the power. I kind of like this because on one hand it makes the stacks not as important. I was a big proponent that feel the burn is not as important as people thought it was in the past. This kind of even just solidifies that position even more. But to compensate for that, Phoenix Flame actually refreshes Feel the Burn too now, which is amazing for our current playstyle with the tier piece. You basically get insane uptimes with Feel the Burn, even when you're not looking around, playing around it anymore. I remember doing dummy tests and getting 98% uptime Feel the Burn without dropping it, without doing weird bad stuff to keep it active for a DPS loss. Just normal rotation, optimal gameplay, 98%, which is great. As I've already talked about, yeah, Pyroclasm was removed, and they moved around some talents. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. In terms of builds and what it looks like we're going to be playing, the general consensus seems to be that Firefall is quite strong. And let me just kind of put some points in. Okay, so it looks something like this. Is it what you want to play? I think I should have Conflag actually. I'm missing a point. And I don't know what I'm missing a point from. That's strange. I'll get back to you during the guide, but let's just pretend I have the right talents right now. But Firefall is taken. Now you have to take 2 points to get to Firefall. Unfortunately, 2 points are useless. That kind of sucks. But Firefall is really, really strong, so we'll play that. The other viable builds is if you don't take these and you kind of just point into this, you can play this talent instead, where you take Conflag, you take Fevered Incantation and Controlled Destruction. You don't take Hyperthermia. It's kind of weird to me that Hyperthermia is worse than Conflag, But the reason is because hyperthermia cannot proc in combustion, like I've already talked about. Our combustion time is so high, it's like 55, 50%, something like that, that hyperthermia has very little time to actually proc, which kind of sucks. These are the main two builds I've seen. Sorry for the abrupt edit. I just had to correct something that I said before that I edited it. The correct builds are where you take hyperthermia, conflag, improved scores. This is one iteration with double critical mass. You can drop hyperthermia and take improved scorch. This is another version. You can drop critical mass and take hyperthermia. That's an option. Or you can get rid of these two and critical mass and instead go into this Firefall. This seems to be the most powerful version of the build so far, but stay tuned into the Fire Guide to see what's going on. I'll be putting that out very, very shortly on the patch release, right after the patch release or right before. I'll see how I get around to it. But yeah, hope this has helped, and I'll see you in the next one.